and welcome to Nelson All Over Cards. Today we're going to be talking about how to test and make sure a hero is good, or like what specific scenarios or modular sets we can run against a hero to make sure that they are good, or I guess more granularly, how to make sure a deck is good. And this has been something that I've been kind of thinking about a little bit because it's kind of hard to normalize, especially with a small data set, how well a villain can perform or how well a hero can perform in multiple different situations. And this kind of came to my mind of something that I wanted to think about after my Wolverine Hero Spotlight, because I think I played Wolverine. I played him against Master Mold, which I think is a really good matchup for Wolverine. And then I played him in a couple of other games that just kind of highlighted what he could do very, very well, and not necessarily put him up and stress test him against a couple of the other scenarios, maybe high threats or longer term villains. And that led to more of an inflated power ranking than I think he actually deserves. I think he's a very strong hero. And this video is not going to be about Wolverine. We'll talk about that in a different video. But I think Wolverine is a very strong hero. S+ tier next to Doctor Strange? I don't think so. So the couple of videos that I've been doing to see if Wolverine or if Doctor Strange is better, Doctor Strange is better. I don't think that Wolverine is necessarily on a power level that Strange or a Spider-Ham is. And I think that was because the games that I played with Wolverine before I did the power ranking for him kind of highlighted what he was good at and didn't necessarily look at him holistically. And so it kind of got me thinking, what should we, or what do you all do to make sure that a hero, or to stress test a hero? And so I'm going to talk about what I've come up with, but I want this to be more of a conversation. I haven't started doing that. Well, actually, no, I did start doing this with Gambit and Rogue, just to kind of mess with it, and I'm not necessarily utilizing that data. But going forward in these hero spotlights, not necessarily on stream, but off stream, I want to play multiple games with this hero, especially a new hero, to understand how they are performing in the grand scope and normalize it versus other heroes. And I say newer heroes, I plan on doing this with all the older heroes as well, but for a lot of the older heroes, I think I've played them multiple times. I have an understanding how they perform in multiple different situations. I've taken probably most heroes through a campaign, which does highlight a lot of different aspects of the hero kit and all of that. So I think the older heroes, it's not necessarily as important before I'm doing a hero or a power ranking, but it is something that I want to be doing. That being said, I've come up with 3 different modular set villain combinations that I think highlight a couple of different strategies and a couple of different play styles that can highlight or pull out and highlight the strengths or even highlight the weaknesses of some specific heroes. So I want to get into that, but I also want to hear what you think, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some good conversation down in the comments to understand exactly what you all think. Maybe I need to add something or remove something. I'm doubling up on whatever, but let's just get into it. So the first villain that I was thinking about doing is Klaw, and these are all expert games. I think Klaw is a pretty well-rounded scenario, right? You're starting with Immortal Klaw, you're starting with the Defense Network, you're starting with a lot of threat on the table, plus a minion. I will say that I am going to normalize what minion gets pulled out. I think if you pull out an Armored Guard versus like Ronin, right? Those are going to be 2 different games. And so I think I'm going to normalize it to an Armored Guard, just to kind of make sure that you're not skewing the data in any sort of specific way to say, hey, like, okay, this was a loss, but I also faced the hardest minion in the entire game from the Kree Fanatic modular set. I think I'm going to normalize that. I'm thinking I'm leaning towards Armored Guard just because I do want Klaw to be a scenario where it can highlight something that's a little bit more of a tempo-paced game where you can build up, but you also want to be a little bit quicker in the game. But Klaw has a lot of threat to deal with. It has minions to deal with. And then I was going to do the Iron Spider Sinister Six, which are some pretty tough minions, but also just not impossible minions. But with that combo, that gives us a good idea of how a hero can perform in kind of one of the more standard set scenarios. And I say standard because it's not necessarily, I guess it is using the standard set, but it's an expert mode, and how it can be utilized in a set where there's not an over exaggerated amount of side schemes, not an over-exaggerated amount of minions. It is a scenario that has a healthy balance between the two of them. I think that is kind of number one. Number two is going to reward heroes like Wolverine that can fight and rush quickly. So I was thinking Expert Rhino, but with the formidable foe environment from Standard 2. What that does is that gives the villain steady, so it kind of can dissuade the heroes that are so very good at stun locking the villain, and you can still do it. And right, I don't want to completely negate some of these heroes because there are stalwart villains in the game, but I think steady gives a nice balance on how a hero that relies on that stun lock can perform against a steady villain with the under attack modular set. So it's a very fast game, rewards rush. If you can get through it quickly, it kind of punishes the heroes that need to build up, but also rewards those that can just hit the ground running. That and then is in contrast to the third game, which would be Magneto. Magneto with the Acolyte modular sets. So tough minions, tough villain, not overly unfair. It's not a Ronin strategy, which also Ronin gets kind of demolished by the rush strategy, so I didn't want to double up there. But it does have the tempo where you can't rush Magneto. I guess you kind of can, but like the boarding party side scheme, side quest type situation means that you can't just throw massive amounts of damage. You have to be thwarting. It's another well-rounded scenario that's similar to Claw. I think takes a little bit longer, as well as has a little bit more threat. And threat is a little bit more, not threat as in like threat on the schemes, but a little bit more issues that you have to deal with. The Acolyte villains are tough. The side schemes that Magneto brings out is massive. Also, Magneto is pretty prone to stun lock, and so where we saw something that dissuaded the stun lock strategy or the status lock strategy with Rhino, this kind of rewards it. So we can get a little bit of both, and I'm hoping that the culmination of those three, plus the hero spotlights that I'm going to do with whatever villain I'm feeling like, we have those kind of set villains that I like to go against, can kind of give a better holistic idea of how the hero is going to perform in a lot of different situations. And with that combo, and then kind of keeping track and seeing how they do, that can help me avoid a situation where I kind of overrank or underrank a specific hero based on the specific matchups that I ran them against, especially new heroes. And so kind of what are your thoughts? Those are the three that I thought would kind of get a well-rounded nature. The other one that I kind of was toying with was like standard mutagen formula to just see how many minions you can take care of. There's a lot of side schemes in mutagen formula as well, so I was thinking about maybe swapping mutagen with Claw, but I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. I thought I would get on camera and just kind of talk about it a little bit to see if you all had any suggestions or any thoughts or comments around what kind of the deck testing would look like. And so each one of these decks that I would build, maybe a protection deck, or probably the ideal scenario is to take each aspect against these three villains with the associated modular sets to try and see how they perform in each different aspect. And so what do you use to test decks or to test against heroes? Are there specific matchups that you prefer to try and highlight a specific situation? So I'm curious. I'm curious to hear what you all think. And based on the feedback and the comments that I get, I'm going to kind of modify this a little bit and try and get a set setting so that hopefully I can utilize that data in those Hero Spotlight reviews so that you can get an understanding of how some of these heroes perform maybe off camera. And I can talk about that with a little bit more concrete experience, which I have played a lot of Marvel Champions. I do think that for a lot of the older heroes, or a lot of the heroes that I've kind of taken through, I'm not saying that any of my old reviews, I don't necessarily think that any of those are horrendously off. I do think Wolverine was placed a little bit higher than what he should be, and we will address that when I go through here in probably a month or so when I do a reevaluation of the power ranking of the heroes. I like to do those on a frequent cadence so that we can evaluate with new cards, or after I get a little bit more exposure to the hero to try and, I don't know, reevaluate and reset those hero rankings and see if anything moved. I don't know, those were my thoughts. I wanted to get your opinion and what you all like to do. If you have specific scenarios, let me know in the comments. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you around. Peace.